There's a moment that happens very quietly. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, and it doesn't look angry. It's the moment an empath stops abandoning themselves. For years, maybe decades, you were the nice one, the helpful one, the understanding one. But what if that kindness wasn't your personality? What if it was survival? Dr. Gabor Maté explains why people-pleasing isn't weakness. It's something many children learn when authenticity feels unsafe. And what happens when that pattern finally breaks? Changes everything.
You can be genuinely nice and genuinely supportive of others and still look after your own needs. That's human nature, I think. But a lot of people are very nice and likable and helpful by suppressing their own needs. That's a coping mechanism. But the other need that we have is for authenticity, to be ourselves. And that again has to do with survival. If you're not in touch with yourself out in the wild, you don't survive. So authenticity is being in touch with yourself and being able to act on your awareness of self in relationship to the environment. I mean, that's just authenticity. So if I feel something, I pay attention to that. If I don't, I'm in danger. So we have this need for authenticity. But if a child is confronted with a dilemma, that if I'm authentic, express my feelings, then my attachments are threatened because my parents can't handle it, because they're too stressed, depressed, or traumatized themselves, then perforce the child will not automatically, I should say, will automatically but not consciously suppress their authenticity. That means I'm no longer in touch with my needs. I no longer pay attention to my feelings, my emotions. I will no longer be aware of them. I won't express them. I won't know what I need, which has all kinds of implications. But one of them is that I'll be I may then compulsively serve the needs of others, ignoring my own, hence disease. Or I may then develop all kinds of false needs, which then really are what addictions are all about. So that it's that irresolvable tension between authenticity and attachment that many children in our society are faced with, that results in their self-suppression. And one of the outcomes, not the only possible outcome, but one possible outcome is then that niceness is a coping mechanism. Almost anybody, when they're being authentic, has a sense of them being inauthentic. I already knew when I was betraying myself and being less than myself and being other than myself. How did I know that? There's some inner knowledge for many of us, simply because the authentic self, not that it disappears, and then when we're not in touch with it, there's a kind of a shame, there's a kind of a suffering that happens. So that shame and that internal suffering, that sense of self-betrayal is our sure guide that we're not being ourselves. On one level, that happens to a lot of people. And then we may look good in the eyes of others, and yet internally we suffer shame because we know that we're not being ourselves. When we say, how do we know? Well, that for many of us is an internal knowledge that arises. Now, why? Because that essential self hasn't gone away and is calling to us. And we don't feel right when we betray it or when we're not out of contact with it. No. That doesn't happen for many people. That doesn't happen for everybody. For some people, then, it takes some catastrophe. So what I'm saying is that at some point or another, if you're not in touch with that inner voice, if you don't hear it, the body will speak to you loud and clear. You're going to get something happen to you. And sometimes that'll happen in the form of illness or symptoms. Then the body's talking to you. The body's saying no when you're not saying no. If the voice doesn't speak to you directly, or if it speaks to you and you don't listen, your body at some point is going to kick in. Or you're going to get depressed. or anxious, or something else. Or for some people, it becomes the opening of a door where we begin to look, okay, what in here wasn't authentic? What in here wasn't genuine? How did I create this situation? How do I keep creating these situations over and over again? Am I just a victim of bad luck? Or is there some pattern here? In other words, something happens, some difficulty happens to shake you out of your complacent belief that things that happen to us are also the most compassionate things. Because basically they're ways of a part of it, how he puts it, a part of us that loves us more than anything else, puts these roadblocks in our way, saying, that's not the way, that's not the way, that's not the way, you better not go that, So there's roadblocks in the way to bring us to ourselves, And so we can look upon our difficulties as problems to get rid of, or we can look at them as teachings to bring us back to ourselves. Well, let me tell you about a friend of mine who lives in Calgary. Her name is Shannon. And Shannon is 48 years old now. And when she was 37, she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. Now, stage 4 meant that the cancer was already in her bones by the time it was diagnosed. At that time, she had 2 young children, aged 1 and 3, and married to a well-to-do businessman. She herself was a very high-functioning executive for Microsoft in Calgary. And then she's diagnosed. She had the perfect life, perfect marriage, perfect home, of course. And then she's diagnosed. And healthy, physically, fit. Always ate well. And then she's diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And she has a transformation. Now, she gets the best medical advice she can get anywhere in North America, and she traveled to New York and elsewhere. She got the best medical treatment, and with that, she was given 1 year to live, because that's the prognosis. Stage 4, despite the medical treatment, chances are you'll be dead in 1 year. Now, a year ago in February, just a year ago now, Shannon traveled to the Napa Valley of California with some of her friends, and they celebrated her 10th year survival and her 47th birthday. And the transformation that she experienced was that when she was diagnosed and started paying attention, she realized that her life had not been her life, because she was sexually abused as a child. And her response to the abuse was, of course, as many children will experience, it can't be about the adults, it's about me. So if this terrible thing happened to me, I must be a very bad person. So I have to be very good to compensate. So the good daughter who doesn't talk about it, doesn't disturb the waters, the good employee, the good student, the good wife who doesn't talk about the husband's addiction issues, because that would again disturb the waters. And when she's diagnosed and she decides she wants to live, she says, the hell with all this perfection and goodness. And she confronts her family of origin about the abuse that she had endured, and she confronts her husband. And she starts living authentic. And she leaves the job, by the way, which wasn't her. Wasn't really expressing who she was. Now, 11 years later, the cancer is still in her bones, but it's completely inactive. But she knows that if she wants to stay alive, she needs to stay authentic. So that I believe that many of these issues are reversible. I'm not promising a cure here to anybody, but Shannon really underwent a major self-journey. And she continues every day to work at it, and she practices her spiritual ways, which she ignored all those years, and she pays attention to herself, and she keeps clearing this stuff out, and she's the picture of health. Her and I give workshops together sometime. So that there's ways to get there, but it's a commitment. And of course, it might threaten the attachment relationships. So that's always your call.
There's nothing wrong with being kind. The problem begins when kindness costs you your voice. If you recognize yourself in this pattern, in the overgiving, the self-silencing, the constant scanning of other people's moods, please understand something important. You were not weak, you were adaptive. You learned very early that connection required self-suppression, and your nervous system did exactly what it needed to do to survive. But survival is not the same as living. Healing doesn't mean becoming colder. It doesn't mean caring less. It means caring without abandoning yourself. It means letting your no exist alongside your compassion. It means allowing authenticity to feel safer than approval. And that shift doesn't happen overnight. It begins with one small, honest moment, one boundary, one pause. One time you choose truth over comfort. That's not selfish. That's integration, and that's where real strength begins.